Is he seriously talking to a dog? Someone scoffed across the park, loud enough for half the benches to hear. A couple of phones came up. Laughter followed. A woman walking by muttered, "Some people just shouldn't be out in public." But the old man didn't react. He simply leaned down toward his aging German shepherd, its eyes foggy from age, and whispered something too quiet for anyone else to hear. Exactly 3 hours later, 5 Marines in full dress uniform walked down the same path. They didn't speak. They didn't glance around. They simply took formation around the bench, and the whole park went silent. Elliot, Eli Brenner, 72, never looked for attention. Most afternoons, he could be found at the same park bench off Maple and 7th, with his dog Max stretched out beside him. They'd been showing up for nearly a decade, through snow, rain, heat, whatever. For Eli, the park offered quiet, a break from the constant noise inside his mind. The distant echoes of commands and explosions softened beneath the breeze and laughter of kids playing nearby. Max wasn't just a pet. He was trained for Eli's anxiety attacks, the kind triggered by memories Eli wished would stay buried. The dog, now graying around the muzzle, had been with him through some of the worst days. When the flashbacks hit, Max was the one thing keeping Eli grounded, a steady companion in a life that no longer felt steady. That Thursday afternoon was warmer than usual for October. Eli sat with his canvas jacket folded beside him, his hands slowly brushing Max's back as he spoke softly. "You did good last night, buddy," he murmured. 2 weeks now. We're doing better." A group of 20-somethings walked by, iced. Coffees, fancy shades, expensive sneakers. One of them laughed. "There he is again, talking to that dog like it's a therapist." Another one chuckled. "Bet he's just making up war stories. Probably thinks he's still on some mission." A girl in the group lifted her phone and started recording. Eli didn't respond. He didn't even flinch. Combat had taught him a long time ago not to show emotion under pressure. This wasn't his first ambush. It was just another kind of battlefield. Max didn't move either, but his ears flicked as the tension shifted. The group kept walking, tossing around caption ideas for the video they'd just shot. A mother nearby shifted away, gently guiding her kid to a different bench. A jogger slowed, for a glance, then sped up again. No one stepped in. No one said a word. Just like always. Eli's hand trembled slightly as he scratched behind Max's ear. The dog pressed his side gently into Eli's leg, the way he always did when he sensed. "Ease, it's all right, boy," Eli whispered. They don't know any better. He wasn't shocked by it. Not anymore. He'd seen far worse. Years ago, he'd carried wounded men out of enemy fire, watched friends take their final breaths, held the weight of sacrifice no one back home wanted to talk about. And now strangers mocked him for needing a dog to help him breathe, for needing something, someone, to remind him he was still here and not lost in those old battlegrounds. Max rested his head on Eli's boot. It was a gesture they both understood. "Still with me, soldier," Eli said quietly. Max gave one soft tail wag. "Always there, always ready." Eli reached into his pocket and took out Max's arthritis meds. His hips had been acting up again, age, service, and time catching up. Eli tucked the pill into a soft treat, part of their evening routine. The park grew busier as the afternoon wore on. Families setting up blankets, couples with coffee cups, kids chasing balloons. Eli remained where he always did, just a man and his dog, a man the world had mostly forgotten. Then, the same group returned, finishing their loop through the park. One pointed, another laughed. "Still talking to his dog," one said. "Probably. Some PTSD case, kinda sad, shouldn't be sitting out here." Their words caught some attention this time. A few heads turned. A child asked their mom why the old man was talking to himself. The cruel jokes had become a show for whoever happened to be nearby. Across the street, a man in a sharp gray suit stood still. Joseph Randall, a retired Marine colonel now serving as the district's Veterans Affairs Director, had just left a meeting when he spotted the scene. He watched, quietly, then pulled out his phone and spoke with calm urgency. "We've got a man down," he said into the receiver. "Location, Maple and 7th West Bench, full dress, arrival in 3 hours." "Confirmed," the voice replied. Randall ended the call and stayed where he was, eyes fixed on the bench. He knew the signs, the subtle rocking, the focused gaze. On the service dog, the flicker of something far away behind the eyes. He'd seen that look in the mirror once. At a distance, he watched Eli pull out a small notebook. Not wild scribbling, but clean notes, tracking meds, monitoring symptoms. VA instructions, probably, something that mattered. 3 hours later, just before dusk, the park grew quieter again. Balloons had drifted away. Crumbs were left behind. But Eli was still there. Bench, bowl, dog, like always. Then came the sound of boots. Boots hit the pavement in steady rhythm. 5 Marines entered the park from the main path, moving in perfect sync. Full dress blues, gloves white as paper, medals shining in the fading light. They didn't speak, didn't look around. They headed straight to the bench and formed up. 2 on each side, 1 behind. The park froze. A frisbee game stopped mid-air. Conversations halted. Kids paused with juice boxes in hand. And those who had laughed earlier, those still lounging, nearby, now watched in complete silence. Phones were slowly lowered. The smirks were gone. Eli sat exactly as he had been, shoulders slightly slouched, hands resting quietly on his knees. Max, sensing something different, rose to a seated position. His posture was alert, focused, trained instincts, long buried, awakened by ceremony. Then came the 6th figure, Colonel Joseph Randall, walking from the shadows, his marine blues now fully visible beneath his open jacket. His face was firm, his steps deliberate. He stopped directly in front of the bench. "Sergeant Elliot Brenner," Randall called, voice calm but commanding. "3rd Battalion, Echo Company, Fallujah, 2004. Eli turned, slowly, eyes scanning. "The uniform?" A pause, then recognition. "Yes, sir," he answered, his voice dry but steady. "You carried 3 of my men through an airstrike," Randall continued. "One of them was my son." Eli said nothing. Just a single nod. Barely. A movement, but it carried everything. He remembered. Randall returned the nod. "Today, I'm returning the favor." The Marines surrounding the bench raised their arms in perfect unison. A crisp salute. The sound of gloves brushing against foreheads echoed louder than any applause ever could. Max stood now, tail low, but his head high, as if he too understood. People didn't know what to do. No one spoke. But they watched. The woman who had filmed earlier quietly deleted her video, cheeks flushed with guilt. A father pulled his child closer and whispered something about honor. The young man from the group of hecklers walked over, phone trembling in his hand. I'm sorry, sir," he stammered. "I didn't know." Eli looked at him, expression unreadable. "That's the problem," he said softly. "You didn't want to know." The young man nodded, swallowing hard. He backed away, silent. "Colonel." Randall turned to face the growing circle of onlookers. "This man gave more for this country than most of us ever will," he said plainly. "And yet he's been mocked for surviving, for coming home and trying to stay here." He gestured toward Max. "This isn't just a dog. This is a brother in arms. Medic, a stabilizer. Sergeant Brenner hasn't lost his mind. He's fighting every day to keep it." The words sank in. A soft clap started from somewhere behind the bench. Then another. Slowly, it spread. Not a loud applause, just quiet recognition. One by one, hands came together. A sound that meant, "We see you now." But the Marines remained at attention. They weren't there for claps. They were there for Eli, for what he'd endured, for what he still faced. One of the Marines broke silence, voice firm but emotional. "Sergeant Brenner's unit rescued my father from an ambush in 2003. I was 4 years old. I'm standing here because of him." Another stepped forward. "He trained my K9 team, taught us things that saved lives overseas." Piece by piece, the picture came into focus. Eli hadn't just served, he had shaped others. He'd helped start the very service dog program that had matched veterans like him with life-saving companions. Max wasn't an exception. He was part of a system Eli helped build. Veterans nearby, some alerted by text, began to show up at the edge of the park. No fanfare, no introductions. Just silent men and women in ball caps and faded jackets. Standing, in witness, an older woman stepped forward with a folding chair. She placed it next to the bench without a word. "I'm with the VA," she said quietly. "You helped my brother when he came home. You told him a dog might help more than medication. You were right." The sun dipped low. Someone brought coffee. Another handed Eli a sandwich. A baker arrived with treats specially made for senior dogs with joint issues. Eli accepted it all with a small nod. No big reaction. "Just quiet grace, they're making quite a scene," he murmured to Randall. "Not big enough," the colonel replied. "Not by half." Eli shook his head, smiling faintly. "Never wanted a scene. Just a quiet bench. Bit of peace." Randall smiled back. "That's why you deserve both." As darkness settled over the park, someone lit lanterns near the bench. The Marines stayed in place, rotating silently every half hour as required. This wasn't ceremony. It was watch duty. Not for the world to see, but for the man who had once stood guard for everyone else. Most of the crowd slowly left, but a few remained nearby. Not gawking, just being present. Some stood quietly. Others took seats a few feet away, not saying a word. They weren't there to interrupt. They were there to bear witness. Later that night, once Eli had gone home with Max, a worker from the city quietly installed a plaque next to the bench. No speeches, no press, just a screwdriver and a single line of text for the ones who made it back and still fight to be seen. No ceremony, just truth. The next day, Eli returned as always. Same spot, same coat, same faithful dog. But everything felt different. People nodded respectfully. Some brought coffee. A few kids came by to pet Max, this time with their parents. Blessing and the teens who had mocked him. They came back too, not in groups, not laughing one by one, no phones in hand, no jeers, just questions. Quiet, careful ones. "Did you really serve overseas? What was it like when you came home?" Eli answered a few, left others hanging. It was on his terms now. No one pushed. That was the shift. His space was now respected. Even without signs or warnings, a local history teacher stopped by one day. She had her students with her but only approached after asking permission. "We're learning about modern wars," she explained. "But we don't learn this, the part that comes after, the part that stays." Eli gave a short nod. "They never print the quiet part," he said. The Marines didn't return in formation after that day. They didn't need to. But service. Members, active and retired, began showing up from time to time. Some sat beside him, some only nodded as they passed. But all of them recognized Eli as one of their own. Colonel Randall started hosting a quiet coffee gathering at the park pavilion every week. Nothing official. Just a chance for veterans to meet, share, or sit together without having to explain themselves. The turnout grew. So did the understanding. Max's arthritis began improving too. A local veterinarian who'd served in Afghanistan started checking on him regularly. She refused payment. "My brother was a dog handler," she said simply. "He made it back because of men like you." One soft morning in spring, almost 6 months after the incident, Eli sat on the bench with Max beside him. Their usual ritual, in motion. The air was light. The trees were full again. The chaos of fall had faded. Eli looked down at Max with a rare, unguarded smile. "Told you we weren't alone, partner." Max's tail gave a gentle thump. His cloudy eyes, tired but loyal, reflected back everything Eli had given, and everything he'd still kept. Some bonds don't need to be explained. Some debts don't come in money. And some of the most powerful tributes are made without a single word. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and let us know your favorite moment in the comments.